Give them.
Sir, we have wounded soldier.
Indie games are a hotbed of creativity. They're often generating interesting, out-of-the-box gaming experiences. The kind of stuff that bigger publishers won't take a chance on because the risk of the unknown is not worth gambling their profit margin. Indies have to do something different, or else they often don't get noticed. I got wind of War Hospital last year, a World War I real-time management strategy game with a twist. It's a war game that doesn't glamorise war. You're not battling on the front lines, you're battling to keep patients alive with limited resources and exhausted health staff. You're fighting for the human soul. Thrown into the shoes of Major Henry Wells, a previously retired army medic recently mourning the loss of his son in the war, you've been redrafted to manage a hospital near the front to help wounded soldiers and the war effort. The gameplay loop consists of injured soldiers being shipped into your casualty. You get a file on each case, status of the patient, good, stable, serious, critical, or even terminal, how long it will take to operate, and how tiring the case will be for the surgeon. You also know how much of your surgical inventory will be used up and how likely complications are. It's your job to choose whether to operate or to deny surgical care, essentially a death sentence for the soldier in question. The difficulty comes in choosing where to use your limited resources. It's a game of hard decisions, and it doesn't shy away from telling you. You will at some point have to make decisions like sparing resources on likely hopeless surgery for a soldier that will die without it. Those soldiers that are sent to surgery and survive are moved to rehabilitation, where you can then choose a destination for them once they're recovered.
Sir, operation was successful.
You can choose to send them to the trenches to defend the hospital from intermittent ground invasions by the Germans, the timings of which are shown on a bar at the top of the screen. If you're short on funds, you can send them back to headquarters in exchange for a type of currency that you can use on camp, staff, and even equipment upgrades, or for resources like surgical supplies or food. Finally, if there's a lack of morale in the hospital, you can choose to discharge the soldiers from duty, which tends to perk everyone up on the wards. It's bleak, and it's not easy, but it's not meant to be. You get a game over for any number of reasons. If you don't heal enough soldiers to defend against the intermittent German incursions, if you're not careful with resources, you can run out of food. If there are too many unexpected deaths, your staff can lose enough morale and you get booted as the administrator. It's frankly pretty full-on stuff to base a video game around, but from what I've played, it does a good job of respecting the difficult position that army medics would have been put in. The game even states at the beginning that it's dedicated to those brave souls who served. One thing that I really did like was the random individual events. Scouts finding injured farmers, messages from headquarters, or generals requesting special treatment for their men. Once, I had a notification that a patient had had an allergic reaction to the anesthesia as they were starting surgery, and I was given a choice. We chose to proceed without anesthesia to perform life-saving surgery, and the guy still ended up dying. This is just one of a whole bunch of micro-stories, and every player will experience different, impactful events. And personally, this is where I think the game really shows its potential. Graphically, the base and the characters have a cartoon stylistic realism, if that's even a thing. It's a kind of a realistic framework of people and buildings with exaggerated features to soften the realism, in an effort to avoid PTSD. I initially liked the cutscenes that looked like war paintings come to life, but the puppet-like movements and the repeated artillery scene got a bit old after about the third viewing. I didn't seem to have any frame drops, but in terms of glitches, I had one episode where after loading a save game, the trenches incorrectly reflected the number of troops I had. It should have been higher, and it did correct itself after a short period of time. The voice acting can be a mixed bag from the cast.
Hey, Doctor, mind your tongue.
Although I found the writing more distracting. Some of the dialogue comes across as bad English translations.
Very well, sir. Now that a decision was taken, we can start operating on these patients.
The tutorial does a good job of slowly introducing the UI and the workings of the management system. There is a function where the game will remind you of your next objective almost every 30 seconds if you don't complete it, which gets really irritating when you're trying to manage something else urgently. Operation difficulty. Yeah, you said that. Go away. Yeah, that's really annoying. Oh my god, go away. Here, the game was reminding me to hire more personnel, but as soon as I tried to do that, It interrupted me hiring people, so it could remind me to hire more people. It's like the developers saw the Microsoft paperclip and thought, yeah, I want that, but I want to make it 150% more frequent and 200% more annoying. Thankfully, this seemed to be exclusive to the tutorial only. The music is crushingly melancholic. It really sells the situation of utter despair. I found it actually limited how long I could play a session for, and it did really get to me after about 30 minutes. In summary, War Hospital is primarily a management strategy game in a World War I hospital setting, with a gameplay loop of making difficult life or death decisions, and coping with the short and long-term consequences. The game unfortunately had a habit of keeping me at arm's length, and with the repetitive loop and the occasionally annoying UI, there wasn't really enough to keep me around for too long. It is a shame because there are a couple of gameplay features that really showed promise. I've flipped back and forth on whether to give this a thumbs down, as in don't recommend, or a side thumb, as in buy on sale. I've ended up thinking it's scraped enough together for me to give it a side thumb. I wouldn't buy this game at retail price, but I think if it's discounted close to half price, there will be some players who will really dig its vibe.